up in our series of must-learn jump blues or jazz blues guitar solos is Billy Butler's amazing solo on Bill Doggett's Honky Tonk Part 1. This was originally recorded in 1956. There's a lot of misinformation about who played on this one. I myself was kind of in the dark about it until fairly recently. This is Billy Butler, not Bill Jennings. Let's just make sure that's clear. I definitely would recommend checking out Bill Jennings though. He's one of my absolute favourite players of all time. And his playing is very similar to Billy Butler's. You know, it's kind of hard to tell them apart at times, hence the confusion as to who plays on which Bill Doggett cuts. And in the very near future on this channel we will be looking at some Bill Jennings stuff in depth. But for now, let's turn our attention to Billy Butler and his brilliant solo on Honky Tonk Part 1. So we're in the key of F and we're going to just play a basic 1-4-5 using power chords. F, B flat, C. So make sure you know your 1-4-5 in every key. 1-4-5. Often you could move the 4 and the 5 down to the next string set, just to keep everything closer. And we're going to play this very typical kind of blues boogie motif, this kind of riff you hear 1,000 times. Now I would recommend persevering with these stretches. You know, not everything has to feel like a walk in the park. Sometimes stuff does feel stretchy. And that's a good thing. That means you're pushing the stretch of your fingers and you'll improve it. And before long you'll reach way further than you could before. But if it's unbearable and super painful, don't do it. And I'm using alternate picking. Then we're going to move up to B flat, but we're going to increase the stretch by 1 fret further. Really good to practice that stuff to get real good independence and strength in your fingers. Then we go back to the F where we have 2 bars, so we do a bit of a mixture of the 2 patterns. Back to the B flat again. The same pattern we used on the F. Back to the F again. This time he just doubles up on that same more basic pattern. Then we go up to the 5 chord, the C. To the 4, the B flat. Back to the 1. Little turnaround on the end. That's a little run up to the 5. You know, that in itself is enough to imply C7. Then we loop back to the beginning. So that's our full 12-bar blues sorted. Now let's get on to the solo. Go to the links in the description to get hold of my lesson materials for this. As always, they're extremely thorough. They have everything notated and tabbed out, finger numbers where needed, chord names, chord grids, backing track, play along, all that stuff. You can get it through my Patreon for a small monthly cost, where you'll have access to all of my lesson materials for all of my videos. Or you can just do a one-off purchase through the Gumroad link. Either way, I do massively appreciate it. Your contribution is what allows me to keep making these videos, so thank you. Okay, for the first phrase of the solo. Very simple, we're just thinking of playing from within this kind of F chord shape. And we're starting on what would be the 5th of the chord, sliding up a whole tone to the 6th, then up to the root. As you probably know from the previous videos we've done, a really common thing in jazz and swing blues and jump blues is to add your 6th quite often. So you might be visualizing something like this, an F major, where you've got the 6th added on the B string 3rd fret in this case. Or in the lower octave, open D string. Also a lot of this stuff where we're going from minor to major 3rd. You know, just with those elements, the F major, the minor 3rd on the way to the major 3rd, in both octaves, and adding the 6th. again in 2 octaves. That's enough to give you a lifetime's worth of vocabulary for this swing blues style. It sounds so good. Anyway, back to the phrase. A little slide up. Then we go on to this little double bend up to the minor third from a semitone below. Let the bends be kind of lazy, don't push them too high. Then a similar kind of thing on the 2nd string 3rd fret. Then slide back into that 3rd fret, that's our 6th, remember. Then hammer on, minor to major 3rd, skip the D string and grab the 5th at the 3rd fret of the A string. It's a great little phrase. Then repeat again. Now at this point we're already in the last 4 bars of our 12-bar blues format. So we're thinking 5, that's your C, 4, B flat to the 1, F. And we're going to play this really classic line built out of 6th intervals. Now again, you can really just be thinking of this kind of a chord shape. There's C, walk down to B flat, isolate the 2 notes that you have on the G and the top E string. So in this case that's your 3rd and your root. Those notes are a 6th apart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps through the C major scale. So we refer to these things as 6ths. And again he does that little minor to major 3rd to get into it. And then we're just playing a steady run of triplets. 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a. And then we get out through this little blues scale line. So that's all F blues scale, or F minor pentatonic. We start with that little finger at the 9th fret of the B string, slide down to the 6th fret. Now we're in shape 2 of our F minor pentatonic, or our F minor blues scale, which would look like this in its entirety. I'd recommend working on all 5 of your pentatonic shapes, make sure they're pretty solid. So within shape 2 we're playing this. I'm not going to break that down note for note because it's really just a descending scale line, and again you can get the lesson materials at the link in the description. They have all of this very thoroughly typed up. Okay, now we're on to our 2nd cycle of the 12-bar blues. We're back on the 1. So we're thinking of this little triad, which looks to be a D minor triad, but really we're thinking F6. Again, it's that thing we spoke about earlier. You take an F chord, and commonly you will add the 6th to it if you're playing swing music. So this would be like an F major triad, where the 5th has moved up a whole tone to become the 6th. Then to get to the 4 chord, this is a neat little trick. Just drop that top note a semitone down. Now you've got the remnants of a B flat dominant 7th. You could be thinking 3rd, 5th, flat 7. Also happens to be a diminished triad. Back to the 1. That stuff sounds so good when you hear it on top of the changes. Check it out. 3, 4. Next phrase is really classy. This is a Charlie Christian type of a lick. We're trying to imply F7, so we're taking this same shape that we spoke about a lot in the Paging the Devil Charlie Christian solo lesson. We're thinking F9 type of a chord shape. Be aware that adding that little finger to the top string could make it an F13. Now we're basically just going to descend that shape. But then we're going to tie these points together chromatically, the 5th and the 3rd. Try and get alternate picking on that as well. Then we jump to the top string, 8th fret, a little bend. repeat on the next string. He's kind of repeating that idea we had on F earlier on, but on the B flat. And again, we're doing that whole minor to major third thing. Repeat the lick, then repeat it again down in F. Now the interesting thing, just to go back to those 2 times on the B flat, the timing is kind of displaced, it's not quite symmetrical. So here's how it sounds in context from that previous Charlie Christian type of lick. 3, 4. Now we're still on the F, we're going to play this great little major pentatonic kind of a line, F major pentatonic. This is a really useful little shape to be aware of, so a very simple way of looking at it, which is often really useful when you're in the moment and you need something quick and easy to grab. Here's your F major again, anchor everything to that for now. Here's your 5th, slide away 2 frets up to your 6th. Again, it's all about adding that 6th. And then here's your root, and then here's your 2nd degree of the scale. Nice little note. These little shapes are so comfortable for us guitar players because they're kind of rectangular or square-like in nature. And then we just slide out to the major 3rd and then grab the 5th an octave above where the phrase began. That's a really good little thing to be aware of. So one of the most useful little collections of notes you could ever get your fingers on. Be aware you could actually put a passing note in as well between the 2nd and 3rd that's going to make it sound a little more country. See how I can repeat that same little run of intervals all over the fretboard? It's really good to practice doing that so you have these strong connection points. You know, in some ways you almost want to be able to have little blocks of complex scale runs and lots of stuff going on, but then these very small, easy to remember shapes that just bridge these tower blocks together. This is one of those really useful things. Okay, so on to the next phrase anyway. Back to this. Exactly the same as it was previous. Now we're on to the 3rd and final 12-bar blues solo. This is really cool. There's some really exciting stuff in here. So we're taking these double stops on the top 2 strings. So here's how I'm thinking about it. So we're on the F chord again. So visualize this F major triad, root position. Take away the G string and you're left with these 2 notes. Now if you move that same shape up to the 13th and 15th frets, you've got that same thing we spoke about earlier, where you've got the F with the 6th added. And we're just literally playing the root and the 6th. So here's your F major, F major 6. Now he does tremolo strumming on that. He just sort of slides up and back. You don't lift your fingers off the strings at any point there. Now going back to the thing we spoke about earlier where you can adapt one note within your original shape to get to your 4 chord, the note this time would be dropping that major 3rd to the minor 3rd. So you could be thinking F minor. Again, this is something we spoke about in my jazz blues soloing lesson that I did a while ago. Again, I'll link that in the description. It goes over all these important points. So to go from your 1 to your 4, you can simply think 1 minor is going to get you some really good notes for that 4 chord. If we put that through the lens of the 4 chord, the B flat 7, you've got your 5th, your flat 7 and your 9th. Now if we stay on those top 2 strings again and slide back up here, unchanged, now we're thinking of this in relation to the B flat. They're the top 2 notes from your B flat major triad. So here's what we've got so far. You've got the 1, then the 4, then back to the 1, where we're going to play this F6 sound again with this sort of D minor triad. Lots of little slides from a semitone below. And then we're on the 4 chord, so this time we're going to that minor sort of shape. back to this little phrase. Now, we're on the 5 next. These are the last 4 bars of your 12-bar blues. So again, this is where you've got your 5 to the 4, back to the 1. He takes this idea of the 6th yet again. So imagine C major. Imagine you're going to add the 6th. And that you're going to just use the top 4 strings. And then move it down in semitones. And again, some tasty kind of fast tremolo strumming in places. So we do it on the C chord, then on the B flat, same thing. Told you this was full of useful tricks. I mean, this is one of the most useful things you could ever learn. If you move this C6 in this case, you know, again, notice that it's actually the same thing as an A minor triad. That's useful to spot. If you move it down a whole tone, still compare that against the root note C, you've got the 9th, the 5th, and the flat 7. So really this is sort of taking you from a C6 to a C9, which on the most simple level is just taking you from a C to a C7. So it's going from a major to a dominant. Same thing on the B flat, of course. Now we're going back to the 1, where we're going to play this blues scale phrase. Just climbing down the blues scale from the 4th fret of the B string. There's your flat and 5th. Now we outline a turnaround here. We outline a 1-4, 1-5 turnaround. So be thinking F, there's your 1, B flat is your 4, back to the 1, to the 5, C7. And you'll start to see these triad shapes emerging under the fingers. Check this out. F, passing note, B flat triad, there's your 4, little bendy thing, back to the 1, there's your root, and then root of the 5. Pretty cool. Again, there's that little fast moment of picking in there. He seemed to do that a lot, these fast little 16th note triplets, I think they are. And that's the end of the solo. So there's a lot to unravel in there, of course. You know, this is stuff we're flying through at quite a speed here in these YouTube presentations. But again, if you go over to my Patreon, you can get hold of the lesson materials for this and just take your time working through it one phrase at a time. Now, in terms of tone for this, if you want to be really authentic, of course, you want to get hold of some kind of an arch top guitar and put some fairly heavy strings on there. I use 12s on my arch tops. Going back to the performance at the start of this video, you could see I was using my ES-125 with the single P90 pickup, whereas through the rest of the lesson I was using my newly acquired 175 with the 2 humbuckers. They do sound quite different actually. However you go about it though, I'd recommend being on the neck pickup, having everything wide open pretty much, plugging into a nice valve amp. I'm plugged into my old 69 Deluxe Reverb. I've got it, you know, barely on really. Yeah, volume's at 2. Distorts quite early, that amp. The reverb's on a little bit, like 2.5. And I have treble and bass set to 3. I just want to hear that sort of woody, low thunk of the arch top tone. So yeah, I guess just keep it simple. No envelope filters or phasers on this one, I'm afraid. Okay, so for this week's recommended listening, first of all, I've got this really good record here. This is called Gone Doggett. So this is a fantastic record. This is just a collection of some of the most well-known Bill Doggett cuts. It starts off actually with Honky Tonk Part 1, and then you've got Part 2. You've got a single Bill Jennings cut on there, a tune called Big Boy. And there's 2 versions of that sort of in circulation. One is Bill Jennings' take and one is Billy Butler on the solo. Again, I'll put a link in the description to my cover from about a year ago of the Billy Butler solo on it. It's probably his best solo in some ways, but it's quite involved and it's quite complicated and it's not an easy one. But do let me know if you fancy seeing an in-depth lesson on that one. Put it down in the comments below. You know, that would be a good one to unravel maybe. The first track on side 2, Quaker City, has one of the coolest opening phrases to a solo. I mean, it's just so chill. It's unbelievable. These guys seem to know how to just grab you from the first note of a solo. This is something I always try and take to heart. You know, these old players back in the day, they didn't waste time revving the engines up. You know, they just went straight to the point. And it kind of proves that point that a lot of players talk about, where they say the first phrase of your solo is kind of the most important one. Because once you get that out there, then you're kind of just tying up loose ends for the remainder of the solo. Helps if you finish on a good one as well, of course. There's also a really good 50-track compilation of Bill Doggett's kind of best cuts. It's available on Apple Music, and I should think it's on Spotify too. It's called Honky Tonk, the best of Bill Doggett. And it's got pretty much everything you would need on there. Again, a big mixture of Billy Butler on some tracks and Bill Jennings on other tracks. Now, as far as Billy Butler on his own goes, I'd recommend checking out a record called Don't Be That Way, the definitive black and blue sessions. One of his most well-known songs is on there. It's called Blues for Marion, and it's got some beautiful phrases in it. Again, just so silky smooth. This guy had an effortless kind of style and finesse about his playing. Just beautiful to listen to. And so many great licks to take. You know, this is how we build our vocabulary. You've got to kind of harvest these pieces for phrases and for local lingo. It's a language after all. Please do like and subscribe and get active down in the comments below. All of that kind of engagement really helps with my channel, and it doesn't cost you a single thing. It just takes a minute of your time, not even that really. And I'd really appreciate it. Okay guys, on to the next one. See you soon.